We have to go back!
So, does anybody else think JJ might feel a little beaten to the punch right about now?
How you get so big into food of this kind?
Alright, so obviously all sorts of spoilers for the Rebels Season 4 episodes Wolves and a Door and A World Between Worlds. If you haven't watched those yet, I'm about to just spoil the living force out of them right now, so you should probably go watch them and then come back to the video. As for these episodes, I don't even know where to begin. Avoid, Force time bending, Ahsoka, Mortis, Palpatine. This had all of the things. But don't worry, as your guide here at the Star Wars Refuge, you are in calm and capable hands.
Gonna just throw a fit. I'm throwing a fit!
Yep.
I'm throwing a big old fit!
Actually, this is gonna probably be a whole lot of questions and not a whole lot of answers, but I'm gonna break down what I can. Alright, so there's a force void, and the Mortis dudes guide the way in a story that's half Raiders of the Lost Ark, half Fellowship of the Rings, Mines of Moria, and half Deja Vu. There's just a lot going on. And if you're wondering where that third half goes, in the force void. Duh. So let's start with the void itself, the world between worlds. This is not something I would have ever expected in Star Wars. Until I saw The Last Jedi. I'm sure that all of this is connected to the film's development in some way. Whether some of the concepts in The Last Jedi came out of what they were doing on Rebels, or some of the stuff in Rebels came out of what they were doing in The Last Jedi, I don't know, but I think there's a little bit of co-evolution going on here. And on that note, perhaps it's the manipulation of these doors that causes Kylo and Rey to be able to speak to each other in The Last Jedi. After all, we could hear them both when Ezra was walking around. This void is really a space between reality where the Force flows, and we see that all things are connected, not just in space, but in time. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Time travel. And it's not even JJ's fault. I'm not really concerned, and I don't think you should be either. See, the Force time traveling thing was functional through this Jedi Temple. The Jedi Temple is not currently visitable. Open for visitors. And yes, there are other places. Obviously, Palpatine was able to open one of these doors, but I think they've made this such a big, complicated mess to be able to do. I don't think it's something we have to be worried about on a regular basis. Also, because Ezra chose not to intervene with Kanan, I think that it's kind of a case of the only people who know how to use it ain't talking, so I don't think it's going to be a widespread problem. What I really like about this is it shows how wide and powerful the Force is, that it really does flow through everything, through all the things, and not just the corporeal ones. The next crazy thing that happened, Ahsoka lives! And she probably lives because of Ezra's meddling. We do see her at the very end of Twilight of the Apprentice, so fans have long held that she is alive. Well, as it turns out, she survives that explosion because she wasn't there for it. Obviously, she eventually goes back through that portal, and it leaves me with the question of where has she been? Or perhaps, when has she been? At the end of Twilight of the Apprentice, she's walking through a triangle. Did she leave the Force Void only to just go back in herself, where she could be up to things without having to worry about Ezra? Does that explain why she hasn't shown up even though she's been alive all of this time? In the event we find out in the Rebels series finale, I don't want to speculate on this too much. If we don't find out in the Rebels series finale, I assure you I will be coming back to this topic. Either way, we know this has been in the works for a long time. Rebels Recon talked a lot about how they've been laying the seeds for this all the way back to when Ezra first talked to Yoda in seasons past. Personally, I'm really happy that Ahsoka's back. I hated her when the Clone Wars started. She was annoying as all get out, and I just wanted her to get out. But she really grew on me as the series progressed, and now she's one of my favorites. In fact, she's as important to Star Wars to me as Anakin or Obi-Wan. And I do think the annoyingness in her character was really important for her overall arc. I really want to see where she goes from here. I have to wonder if her fate is now tied to Ezra's. It would be a very meaningful bond between the two of them, seeing as how they were the kid stars of these two TV series, kind of getting to join forces and going off to have strange Revan-like adventures out in wild space. I also have to wonder, and this I can't take credit for, this comes from a comment that was left on one of our videos, if perhaps Ahsoka isn't supposed to represent the daughter, and by that extension, could Ezra have to represent the son? Remember, I don't think the dark side is necessarily evil. I think the Sith are terribly evil, and that they're using the dark side for bad things. For more on that, you should check my ongoing series on balancing of the Force. But either way, I kind of wonder if the bringing back of the son and the daughter isn't relevant to how we now have Ahsoka and Ezra. And this brings us to the Mortis gods themselves. I'm still used to calling them anchorites, considering that's what they called themselves in Mortis, but whatever. I'm not sure if these episodes confirm them as real or not. The episodes from the Clone Wars could still be a vision. Considering they all pretty much end up dead or without power in those episodes, what we see in Rebels could just be a representation of what people know about these mythological figures. It could also be a case of they did die in the Mortis trilogy, but we're not talking about where, we're talking about when. But it's also possible that these guys could just be the equivalent of religious icons, which would lead to the idea of people existing as versions of the daughter and son, as opposed to the daughter and son existing themselves, just like Anakin is a version of the father. This does take away from an idea I discussed a bit ago about the Force being brother and sister and sibling in its nature, but in a way Ahsoka and Ezra are siblings within the Jedi Order, so it could be just not blood siblings, but still the bond between two people from some sort of similar upbringing. Another thought I want to discuss is why doesn't Palpatine go into the void himself? Again, I can't take credit for this. I got this from another comment left on one of our videos, which really appreciate. It really helps me think through what I'm going to say next. But anyway, this one has really been boggling my brain. Wouldn't going into the void be more important than getting two sort of Jedi out of the void? Can he even go into the void? Can he even see the void at all? Does he just think he sees Ahsoka and Ezra standing somewhere? The station that Palpatine is at, we did see in Star Wars The Clone Wars and the Yoda episodes, so I kind of wonder if this is a thing that Palpatine has been peering into for some time. I was actually talking to Professor Django about this, and he had the idea that this could be how Palpatine has always foreseen the future. What I think is interesting about Palpatine not going into the void is when Ezra's walking around and he's hearing the voices, he doesn't hear a lot of Darksiders. We hear Obi-Wan, we hear Yoda, we hear Rey, we hear Jin, who's not even a Force user, we hear Maz. The only Darksider that I can recognize that's heard in that void is Kylo Ren. I take that back. We do hear Vader specifically when Ahsoka is remembering her confrontation with him, though whether that's because Vader exists in that void or because he exists in Ahsoka's memory, I'm not quite sure. No Maul, no Dooku, no Palpatine, no Snoke. And it's not a are they alive thing or not, because Obi-Wan and Yoda are both alive in the time period when Ezra goes into the Force portal. Does this mean that Kylo isn't as dark as we think he is? I mean, yeah, he kills his father and, like, a lot of people, but does this mean that it is possible for his redemption, or does this mean it is possible for him to find a way to follow the dark side that isn't evil? Even though the things he's doing now are still kind of evil. Is there some sort of barrier where Sith teachings don't allow you to enter this place? Because again, Kylo isn't a Sith. It's also possible that Ben Solo was intended to be represented in this Force Void, and because we don't currently have any dialogue from Ben Solo, they used Kylo, but I would like to think that it's more meaningful than that. But this is absolutely a topic I will eventually be diving into in another video. And finally, we have the mention of the Cosmic Force. Again, in the Yoda episodes, which are some of the most important episodes from the Star Wars The Clone Wars, we have the ghost of Qui-Gon explaining that the living force, which is the energy field made by all living things, feeds the Cosmic Force. I think the void that we're seeing is this cosmic force. I like to think of it as the thing that binds the galaxy together. This is just an idea I'm really excited about, the idea that we're going to get into and talk about how there's different kinds of the force. That the living force is the manifestation of energy from what's alive, but that the force is more than that, and that there's this kind of galactic, not so much plan, but galactic flow of what the Force is trying to accomplish. But anyway, much like a J.J. Abrams TV show, I've presented far more questions than I have answers, and it just gets me really excited because, you know, JJ's making episode 9, if you couldn't figure out why I kept talking about him. Anyway, Do you have questions? Do you have answers to my questions? Do you have thoughts about Rebels in general? Please leave it in the comments. Follow us at Port Haven Forums on Twitter and visit us at port-haven.com. I am so excited to talk to you about all of this, and I can't get over how amazing these episodes were. Until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Now cooking can be fun.